Hello, I'm Robin Vincent and welcome to Multimedia Technology. Today we're looking at the Uno drum. What's the Uno drum? It's a little drum machine. It's a fantastic, fully featured, versatile, packed full of sounds sort of drum machine in kind of an analog steppy style, but it's not restricted by that. It's not got tons of controls, although they are hidden away underneath the plastic. It's got a few knobs at the top and some pads that you can play. But ultimately it's a groovy little drum machine that does stuff like this. It's been out a little while, but they've just released a whole stack of what they're calling Drum Anthology sound sets for it. And so IK Multimedia said to me, would I like to do a little video on the new drums? And I said, yeah, all right, well, you better send me one then. So they did, and here it is. So the plan for this video is just to do the 30-second tour of the Uno drum, because you've probably seen it before, but I'm going to give you my vibe with it, if you like, what I've discovered about this little thing, and then I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey through the new sound content. So this is probably going to be mostly a sound demo, I suppose. I don't know, I'm just going to kind of make it up as I go. But let me give you the main features, and then I'll bring you in closer and we'll have like a more detailed look. But the idea is that you've got 12 sounds, 12 drum tracks if you like. It's 11 note polyphony, which means I think the close and open hi-hat share, so you can't have one going at the same time as the other one, which you wouldn't, of course, would you? That would be madness. You have 2 kicks, a snare, the hi-hats, clap, cymbal ride, cowbell ribbon, 2 toms, all the usual sorts of things that you would expect to find. Some of these are analog. You get an analog kick or 2. You get an analog snare. With a couple of little parameters you can change, including that's sort of a low pass filter on the snare. It's not terribly convincing, but I guess it is. But it's a little bit just like turning it down. Oh yeah, no, there's something there, definitely. The hi-hat is also analog. A little bit of tuning available there. And the decay. Clap is also analog. So these bottom 6, the kick, the snare, the hi-hats and the clap are all analog, generated by analog circuits within the Uno drum itself. Everything else is sample based, PCM samples, and that is what gives it its versatility. Because I mean, can it compete really with something like the RD8? Can it? It can on its own terms. I mean, it doesn't have the physicality of the RD8. It doesn't necessarily have the classic programming interface or all the individual control over everything all at once on the front panel. But it goes about it in a different way. So you've got a whole stack of very similar sounds because you have this row of analog stuff, but then they've built in all this sample stuff as well. Now each pad can handle 5 sounds. So I go for this tom, it has a choice of 5. Like so, or the snare. So those are sample based ones. It's only the first one which is analog, and that gives me some greater depth over decay and snap and tuning, whereas on the sample based ones you get tuning, you can hear that's a sample, can't you, and decay, so you can shorten it, but otherwise everything has 5 sounds. Which is nice, and you can create patterns with it. You can create patterns on the fly if you like. I'll tell you what, let's clear. Why don't we clear something first? So I'm going to select everything, just clear the pattern so there's nothing there. I'm going to hit record, I think, and go. And there you go. But of course I've not been running to a click or anything like that, so it's just kind of nonsense, but it's working all right. You can also do it in a more step way. So if I get rid of all of that, I've got a kick or say a hi-hat, paint my hi-hats in, stick my kick in, stick a snare in somewhere. It's also got this rather nice randomization button, so I can hit random and hit something and it will just stick it in. It's really cool. And you can record movements and bits and pieces in. Yeah, nice. Other features it has is something like the stutter, which I've used a few times, and all that does is it does something weird to the timing, so it either repeats or it repeats with a little bit of a thing. Let me show you. So I know there's something going on there, but there's different types of stutter. From the crazy to the just repeating. There's also a roll, which is when you select a sound, you hit roll and it just repeats that one. It rolls on that sound. There's other things in there like swing and humanization, and you can drive it, and there's a compressor to push things. You can change the levels individually, and you can put sounds together and make them into a kit and save it as a kit. So as you go through the kits, it's not necessarily a whole new drum kit, it's just a collection of all of the sounds that are in there put together as a kit. What I find remarkable actually is as you're going through the kits, it really changes the pattern. I mean, the pattern's staying the same. The pattern's the same at the moment, but the difference as you change the kits is just quite interesting. So you can almost play with a single pattern just by changing the sounds around, and that creates a bit of interest by itself. You can store tons of different patterns as well, of course you can. And the tempo can go up to 300. There's a mute button, which does what it says. You can have different pattern lengths, you can stick your kits together, change different sounds around, humanized swing, divide it about the place. It's a drum machine, man, and that's what it does. Downside, I mean, you don't necessarily have to like the interface as such, but it's functional. It does what it says it does, and actually having pads to play in this way gives it a whole other flavour, rather than something like the RD8 that you have to do everything pretty much in step mode, or you just do one trigger of one thing at a time. With this, I can potentially knock out a beat. Trying to do rolls is not that funky, but you can knock out a beat, you can record that, and off you go. It's tremendously easy. It's a whole lot of fun. I mean, until I got the RD8 through a little while ago, I hadn't played with a proper hardware drum machine for quite a while, and it's immensely fun. And this is no less fun than the RD8. It's a different vibe. It's got all this different character to it. With the samples and mixing those in with the analog stuff, you've got a completely different palette that you're working with. So it's into this world, this mixture of analog and samples, that this anthology comes in. Now, the anthology, the idea behind it, I think, is IK wanted to capture just a whole load of really old, crappy drum machines and stuff that in to see what that does. And, you know, in terms of a spoiler, it does some really interesting things. So what I'll do, I'll bring you in a bit closer and we'll have a play. So the anthology sound content is completely free to all Uno Drum users. All you got to do is register Uno Drum and you can download the stuff. Now, the way that you stick the content into the Uno Drum is not the most elegant thing in the world. It's a bit kind of bootloadery, firmware updatey, that kind of thing. So what you get is a folder. See here, folder, and these are the stuff. There's essentially 10 lots of sounds, each one covering a whole bunch of weirdo drum machines you've either never heard of or never cared about, but now are suddenly going to be completely fascinated by. But there's also some classic stuff in there as well. And what happens is you double click the installer. It says, oh, there it is, thinks about it, sticks the Uno Drum into update mode, and you go install. Takes a couple of seconds, then it's done. And probably the most annoying thing is that you then have to turn off and on your Uno Drum. It's annoying because, you know, USB drivers and MIDI and that sort of thing, if you're connected to a DAW or something else going on, it's going to potentially cause you a little bit of grief. So you kind of need to be out of your MIDI software in order to do this first. So what has happened is it's taken a whole new bunch of samples and stuffed it in here. So all of the sample-based, the PCM-based stuff has now been overwritten completely by the new sounds. Your analog stuff, so this bottom row, will remain the same as far as analog goes, but you'll suddenly find the other sounds have changed. And some of them remarkably so. There's the analog. So let's see what this sounds like, because the kits are still working, all the patterns are still there, but when it selects a kit, it's now selecting completely different sounds to what it did before. So what do we have with this particular one? So the first one has a whole bunch of acetone rhythms. Whatever the heck they are, it's stuff from the 1960s. So these are the sort of sounds that you would find in really old bits of old crappy stuff. But what I find is it has a remarkable character. I mean, you can tell that these are old analog sounds. You know, mixed in with a little bit of our traditional 808 analog. I mean, what the heck is that? I mean, of course, you can select whatever sound you want to be in this kit. So at the moment, this one, if I go to the sound, this is obviously the analog. Let's put in something else, and this one is. So if we make it all into the new samples. They're just deliciously chewy sounds. Really like that one. Although number 2 is also a feast of retroness. Same deal, double click it, hit install, done. More sounds. Handy button here. If you don't want the pad to sound when you select something, then hit the select button and it will select it without sounding. So I can now go in here and change that. Whoops. I mean, that's amazing. That's a group of sounds put together that I wouldn't have necessarily put together myself. It's just there within it. Now, these are taken from the Hammond Autovary 64, the Wurlitzer Sideman, the Univox drum machines, and the Columbia CRB 81 rhythm box. I mean, gritty old bits of crappy technology. Oh, it's really nice. I mean, what perhaps would have been nice would have been to have some rhythms and some patterns from these sorts of drum machines in here all ready to go, so you could get a complete flavour of what it's supposed to, or did, in its original situation, sound like. I mean, where did that come from? Alright, moving on to the next lot, Library 3, is the Korg and the Mini Pops. See, that's called Mini Pops. Oh yes. Next up is a selection of Roland drum machines, the CR78, 5000, 8000 and the TR77. Yeah, the old CR78 is not really my bag, man, as it were. But the next lot is all the TRs. We've got 606, 808, 909 and the 33. I mean, what it doesn't tell you is what actual sounds there are within it. It just gives you a whole bunch of sounds, and they're there to be explored. I mean, we can have a little bit of a look if you like. So this is the analog we already know. So these are the options for kick. In library number 6, you have the Lel Rototom, the Maxon DS200, Star Instruments Snare 3, and the Four Manta UDS. I've never heard of any of these. Haven't got the faintest clue what these are supposed to sound like. So I don't know about you, but these are some sort of interesting and extraordinary sounds that I was not expecting to find in this little machine. And it takes you off down little groove avenues. There's some tuning obviously going on with the cowbell. So as the cowbell changes, there's some great stuff in here. That's just brilliant. Now the next lot is Simmons. Some Simmons sounds and some Tama sounds. Moving into more modern space now with some Joe Mox and MFB and Soundmaster SR88. This could be described as being a bit sort of future retro. Good finish. Good finish. Soundbank number 9 is a collection of rare 1970s drum machines. The Regal Rhythm, the Nomad Rhythm Maker, the Unitra Ultra, Multivox Rhythm Ace. Yeah, interesting. Don't grab me quite so much as some of the other bits of sound content, but there's certainly some fresh and funky things available for you in there. The last anthology library, number 10, brings in some portable machines like the Boss DR110, the Realistic Concert Make Electronic Accompanist Metronome, the Delptronics LDB1, and the ELI CR7030. This is the last bank. So there you have it, 10 new sound banks for the Uno drum. That adds a whole load of value to this little machine. I mean, there's stuff in there which, are you ever going to use it? I don't know. I mean, it's all sort of mixed together and thrown at you. You don't feel like I'm going to load a 606 drum kit and use that. You don't feel like I'm going to load the mini pops and use that. You've just got this sort of dump of sounds and character and style thrown into the machine that you can then find your way through and explore and mess about with. So I would perhaps suggest that if you're looking for authenticity, then that's not exactly what this is about. This, for me at least, my reading, my sense of it, having played with it a bit, is that each bank just brings a character. It says, here's a bunch of stylistically interesting sounds that are kind of related to each other, and wallop, they're inside your drum machine. You can start making interesting, refreshing, innovative beats with them. And really, that's all you want from a drum machine. If you can do something different, if you can do something which sounds like it's not really been done before, then you are cooking on gas as far as a drum machine goes. I mean, obviously, if you just want to replicate something, that's fine. There's probably a decent bit of software out there for that. But with this, it gives you this nice interface, this hardware feel, a few bit of tweaking, the programming that you want to be able to do with your fingers, not with a bloody mouse and a piece of software. This is where you can put stuff together. And so on. On the downside, I suppose, there's no trigger outs on the back, there's no individual outputs, you've got just mini jack bits and pieces, and the MIDI, annoyingly, is not even mini jack, it's smaller than mini jack. But then, who knows what's going on with MIDI connectors these days. Probably the biggest downside, I suppose, is that currently you can't swap and exchange kits and sounds between the different libraries. So whenever you load up a new library, it replaces all the sounds that are in here other than the analog ones. So if you wanted to, for instance, you've built a kit with one lot of the sound content and you wanted to, put that together with a kit from another load of the sound content, you can't currently do that, which seems like a bit of a shame. You would have thought there has to be some way of extracting the sound you want into some kind of file and then bringing those back in alongside something else. I mean, maybe that's something that can come. There is a sound editor for it where you can, I think, save patches and patterns and things like that, which is great. So there has to be a way that you can pull out a kit, save it in some other form and bring it back in with a collection of other kits. Maybe. And then that starts to lead you down the road of there has to be a way to pack your own samples in. That has to be a thing, doesn't it? Because they've just squeezed all these samples from whatever it is that they recorded the stuff from into here. So they must have a mechanism by which you can import samples into the Unodrum. It has to be possible. But at the moment, as far as I understand it, those sorts of things can't be done. But who knows what could be available down the line. But those things aside, as I say, importing a whole bunch of style and character and vintage vibe into your machine and messing with it, that's just fantastic. You can't beat that. So unless you're after a proper 808 vibe in the whole drum machine experience and you want to sort of avoid the complexity of something like an Electron machine or a Joe Mox, then you should check this out. It's so simple, so straightforward, so rewarding, and so much fun to play with. And with 10 new banks of 55 sounds each, then you can't go too far wrong. I would say that the analog side of this is really good. I mean, it's in there, totally in your face and compared to the sample side of things. And you have just enough control to make it interesting. So the Unodrum then. Yeah, what a nice little box. And in the meantime, go make some tunes.